Hey guys, tonight we drift up through a violet sky, past the slow swirl of Mediterranean mist and into a cool hush above the clouds. Marble gleams beneath your feet, now polished, ancient, cracked in places, and somewhere in the distance, soft. Laughter echoes like wind through dry olive trees. You've arrived at Mount Olympus, that famously dysfunctional divine penthouse, where every family gathering has at least one betrayal, one thunderstorm, and probably a goat turning into something else. You tiptoe between golden columns, trying not to interrupt a squabble between Poseidon and Athena about who invented cities first. Spoiler, it's still unresolved. Behind a curtain, Hera mutters something icy about Zeus's latest detour, and you're starting to realize this place is less divine counsel. More mythological soap opera with extra lightning bolts. Here's your first reality check. You probably wouldn't last 5 minutes up here without getting turned into a tree, a bird, or worse, an unwilling plot twist. The gods are powerful, yes, but they're also petty, jealous, and suspiciously like your cousin's messy group chat come to life. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from? What time is it where you are? I read every single comment, even the sleepy ones. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step closer to the central throne, the air thick with rose-scented ambrosia and old grudges. Zeus's chair stands taller than the rest, ornate, glowing faintly, a reminder of who won the last celestial power grab. But before Zeus, there was another god on that throne, one who didn't just rule, but devoured. Cronus, the father of time, and also of poor parenting decisions. Cronus had inherited the throne from his own father, Uranus, in a family moment best summarized as, "I'll overthrow you before you overthrow me." Historians still argue whether this was a metaphor for generational change or just early evidence that Greek mythology had no chill. Either way, Cronus took no chances. A prophecy warned him one of his children would dethrone him, so he simply swallowed each newborn whole. Logical, right? Rhea, his long-suffering wife and sister, because of course, eventually got tired of handing over infants like snacks. So when baby Zeus came along, she wrapped a rock in swaddling cloth and handed it to Cronus instead. And he ate it without checking. Apparently, even gods can be distracted during mealtime. This is where your night truly begins. As you float alongside baby Zeus hidden in a cave raised on goat milk, cradled by nymphs, you start to sense the pattern. Every peaceful moment in this world is just the intermission before a family feud. Fun fact, that cave where Zeus grew up, people still claim to have found it. Several caves in Crete actually compete for the title, with stalactites that supposedly drip divine history. Tour guides argue, scholars shrug, and goats continue to do their thing. But back on Olympus, you glance across the marble plaza where statues of gods stand frozen in mid-argument. Athena with her brow furrowed, Hermes with one eyebrow lifted in eternal sarcasm, and Hades just slightly off to the side, half forgotten but always listening. Olympus isn't just a place. It's a mood. A perpetual holiday dinner where no one leaves and grudges age like fine, spiteful wine. And while modern scholars like to dissect these myths as metaphors, power, morality, psych, there's also the undeniable fun of it all. Where else does your uncle eat his kids and your dad give birth from his forehead? Still, the gods weren't always perched up here, looking down. Once, they fought a war that shook the sky. Zeus, once grown, returned to confront his father, and with help from his siblings regurgitated in reverse birth order, No less, he overthrew Cronus and tossed the old titan into the dark abyss of Tartarus. Historians still debate whether the Titanomachi, that's the fancy term for the war between Titans and Olympians, was rooted in actual ancient political upheaval or purely mythological flair. What's certain is, it ended in chaos, thunder, and a total reshuffling of cosmic power. And so, Mount Olympus became home to the new gods, not kinder gods, not wiser, just newer, with fresh grudges, brighter sandals, and an unspoken agreement to never talk about what Cronus did with that rock dot. As you wander deeper into the palace, the night outside darkens. Stars drift past like drowsy thoughts. You hear laughter behind a golden door, then shouting, then something crashing into a column. Another family meeting, no doubt. You pass murals etched in stone, scenes of betrayal, love affairs, punishments, and strange transformations. You realize every god here carries baggage, usually in the form of a sibling with a grudge or a mortal they forgot to call back. And through it all, Zeus rules from his throne, king of the gods, master of thunder, and magnet for every kind of divine drama you're about to meet. So go ahead. Settle in. This is only the beginning. You tiptoe past the echo of Zeus's thundercloud snore and descend into a much darker time, before Mount Olympus, before the gods you know by name, into the cold, primal void of early myth. Here, everything feels heavier. The air is thick with old silence. You're walking through the twilight world of the Titans, and the first face you see is Cronus. He's tall, skeletal in a handsome kind of way, and always looking over his shoulder. You don't blame him. After all, he did overthrow his own father, Uranus, by slicing him into cosmic confetti. And now, karma is circling the block. Cronus had once been the golden boy of the Titans, a symbol of time, cycles, and authority. But power in this realm is like a badly wrapped gift. Looks impressive until you realize it's cursed. The prophecy said his child would do to him what he did to his father, and Cronus took that warning. Literally. So, when Rhea gave birth, Cronus snatched up each baby and swallowed it whole. Hestia, Hades, Hera, Demeter, Poseidon, down the hatch, one after another, like some nightmarish tapas platter. You hover awkwardly at the corner of this gruesome dinner party, unsure if you're supposed to be horrified or impressed by the sheer efficiency. And yes, there are ancient depictions of this. Painted amphorae with little arms and legs squirming in Cronus's belly. Not exactly bedtime art, but definitely memorable. Quirky fact, ancient Greeks believed that gods were physically real tall, strong, beautiful, and more or less walking soap operas. Some even claim to descend from them, which, given this family tree, is a pretty bold flex. Now, poor Rhea. Imagine being the mother of 6 and having nothing to show for it but acid reflux, and an extremely suspicious husband. When Zeus came along, she snapped, tired of raising children only for them to become Cronus's midnight snack. She wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and handed it to him. He swallowed the rock whole, didn't even chew. Historians still argue whether this moment symbolizes the transfer of power, maternal defiance, or just early Greek commentary on clueless dads. Either way, it worked. Rhea smuggled baby Zeus to a cave on Crete, where he was raised in secret by nymphs and a divine goat named Amalthea. That goat? She not only fed Zeus, but supposedly inspired the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. Yes, the same one you see every Thanksgiving, stuffed with grapes and squash. You're welcome. America. Meanwhile, Cronus carried on, loaded with children and none the wiser. And as Zeus grew stronger, louder, and more confident, the sky itself seemed to rumble with anticipation. Time, ironically, Cronus' own domain was. Running out, you shift uncomfortably in your sandals. It's getting harder to root for anyone here. Cronus is a tyrant. Zeus is a future lightning-chucking heartbreaker. The rest, currently undigested and waiting for round 2. Family reunion goals. Eventually, Zeus returned. Older, clever, and armed with a plan. He offered Cronus a drink laced with mustard and wine, ancient Greek ipecac, essentially. The Titan choked, gagged, and promptly vomited up his children full grown. And a little annoyed. Yes, that's how it worked. Don't overthink the digestive timeline. Mythology has its own rules, and biology is not one of them. The siblings, grateful but not exactly thrilled about the whole being swallowed alive thing, joined Zeus in declaring war. What followed was a 10-year cosmic brawl, the Titanomachi. Thunderstorms crashed, mountains cracked, oceans boiled, and sides were taken. Cronus fought with the old gods, the Titans. Zeus fought with his siblings, the Cyclopes, and a few other heavy hitters like the Hecatonchires, giants with 100 arms, which is only slightly more terrifying than it sounds. Eventually, the Olympians won. Cronus was overthrown and hurled into Tartarus, a deep, gloomy abyss reserved for enemies of the gods and overly ambitious antiheroes. But here's the thing. Some versions of the myth say Zeus didn't imprison Cronus at all. Some claim he was allowed to rule over the Isles of the Blessed sort of a celestial retirement home. Others say he was cut into tiny cosmic crumbs and scattered like stardust. Scholars still debate the ending. Was it mercy, revisionist myth-making, or just an ancient case of choose your own adventure? Either way, the children of Cronus took the throne. But let's be clear, they didn't exactly break the cycle. They just swapped one brand of family dysfunction for another. Less swallowing, more smiting. You glance around the divine hall and notice a peculiar pattern forming. Power never changes hands peacefully here. Every new ruler arrives with thunder, blood, or a strategic rock swap. And every myth begins with someone getting betrayed, abandoned, or turned into a tree dot as you walk past a fresco of Cronus mid-snack. You realize something else. The Greek gods aren't just stories, they're reflections. Of families, of fears, of messy, unresolved human emotions dressed in divine robes. Which brings us back to Mount Olympus. You hear distant thunder, not the angry kind, but the someone's bragging again kind. The sound of new drama brewing. Among the siblings who once stood shoulder to shoulder in battle, now they're rulers. And rulers fight, but that's a story for next time. Or, well, about 5 minutes from now. You're back on Olympus now, standing on a balcony of cool marble overlooking clouds that ripple like silk bedsheets. The stars blink slowly above you, but there's no peace in the air, just tension. The kind of tension that comes when siblings share power but not trust. Poseidon sulks near the fountain. Hades adjusts his robe like he wants to be anywhere else. And Zeus. Well, Zeus is rehearsing his best "I'm the king now" pose. After Cronus' downfall, the three brothers stood together and did what all good siblings do after a family crisis. They fought over the inheritance. Instead of hugs and therapy, they cast lots to divide the universe. Historians still debate whether this drawing lots detail is poetic invention or an ancient attempt at portraying fairness in the face of divine ego. Either way, it's how they settled things. Zeus drew the sky. Poseidon got the sea. Hades ended up with the underworld. One got thunder and birdsong. One got waves and horses. One got ghosts and existential dread. You can practically hear Hades muttering, "Sure, guys. I'll take the land of the dead. Totally fine." Not bitter at all. It's worth noting that Hades wasn't exiled. he wasn't punished. In fact, many versions paint him as the most stable and least dramatic of the three. But let's be honest, if you're stuck in the underworld with rivers made of sorrow and a three-headed dog that sheds everywhere, you're going to have a bit of an attitude. And yet, there's something quiet and regal about Hades. He doesn't storm around like Poseidon. He doesn't seduce half the countryside like Zeus. He just runs his underworld efficiently, gloomily, like an immortal accountant who keeps perfect books and hates office parties. Meanwhile, Poseidon isn't thrilled with his lot either. Sure, the ocean is vast and powerful, but it's also unpredictable, messy, and full of weird fish. Poseidon spends most of his time trying to prove he's just as mighty as Zeus, often by causing earthquakes, storms, and the occasional tsunamis. This earned him the nickname Earthshaker. Not exactly subtle, quirky aside. In one lesser-known myth, Poseidon tried to impress a girl by creating the first horse. Not a flower, not a poem, a full horse. Which sounds charming until you realize he also flooded a valley in the process. Historians and horse lovers alike still argue whether this counts as romantic or deeply concerning. But no one wanted this guy more than Zeus, the clouds, the light, the throne on Olympus. He wanted to be king, and he got what he wanted. Of course he did. He's Zeus'd out from the very start. Zeus positioned himself not just as ruler, but as the authority figure. He carried the thunderbolt, forged for him by the Cyclopes as thanks for freeing them during the war. You hear it crackle faintly, even now, as he taps it against his palm like a board hall monitor. But ruling the sky doesn't mean peace. Not when your siblings hold grudges, your wife questions your loyalty hourly, and your extended family includes both literal monsters and ex-boyfriends who turned into trees. Zeus's first challenge wasn't a mortal rebellion or a Titan uprising. It was the gods themselves. Even after the war, the new order wasn't exactly orderly. Divine egos clashed like cymbals at a toddler's recital. And that brings us to the first great Olympian standoff. At one point, Hera, Poseidon, and Athena, all tired of Zeus's high-handedness, formed a little resistance group. Their plan? Tie Zeus up and strip him of power. Very democratic. Very ancient Greek. They managed to bind him while he slept. A daring move that probably involved a lot of whispered coordination and the divine equivalent of duct tape. But just as they prepared to divide Olympus among themselves, a minor sea goddess named Thetis summoned Briareus, a 100-armed giant who burst in, untied Zeus in a flurry of limbs, and saved the Thunder King. No one talks about what happened next, but the look Zeus gave them, let's just say it echoed for centuries. Silent, burning, disappointed dad meets vengeful god. Historians argue whether this myth reflects actual political unrest in ancient Greece, perhaps tension between temples or city-states, or simply dramatizes power struggles common to all leadership. Either way, the message is clear. Even the gods didn't trust each other for long. And honestly, who could blame them? Zeus constantly makes decisions without consulting anyone. Poseidon sulks whenever mortals prefer Athena. Hera plots. Athena eye rolls. It's not Olympus, it's a divine version of group project hell, and Zeus is the guy who insists on putting his name first. Still, despite it all, there's a strange kind of balance. The world turns, mortals pray, sacrifices are made. And up here, among the clouds and grudges, the gods play out their roles, fighting, flirting, scheming, and sometimes, very rarely, laughing together. You sit quietly by the edge of the balcony. As a breeze picks up, it smells like wild thyme and smoke. Below, lightning flickers in a distant storm, a reminder that power never sleeps, even when Olympus does. And tomorrow, More drama, more thunder, more suspiciously missing cows. But for now, you let the cool air settle your thoughts. The sky stretches out above you, vast, unknowable, and full of secrets that no log-drawing ceremony could ever fully divide. The wind picks up slightly as you linger on that marble ledge, and below the clouds, the world stretches endlessly, seas roiling under Poseidon's moods, shadows flickering from Hades' unseen kingdom, and above it all, the smug serenity of Zeus's open sky. But that quiet is deceptive, because now you step into the most awkward family gathering in divine history. The gods aren't just brothers and sisters, they're co-workers, roommates, occasional nemesis. You know those group chats where someone always types in all caps, someone else never replies, and two others are clearly subtweeting each other. Olympus is that group chat, but eternal. With THUNDERBOLTS. And nowhere is that more obvious than the daily passive-aggressive ballet between Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon. Officially, they're equals. Unofficially, they rank themselves constantly. Zeus is first among equals. That phrase comes up often, politely suggesting superiority while pretending it doesn't. He's the boss who never clocks out. The one who interrupts every meeting with, "Let me just say one thing," then talks for an hour. Poseidon, meanwhile, is constantly trying to assert his importance, flooding coastal cities, inventing new sea monsters, and insisting that more mortals build temples near the beach. He's the loud, ocean-scented middle child who wants respect, and by respect, he mostly means attention. Hades? He just keeps a spreadsheet of who said what, who owes him favors, and who's eventually going to die. Spoiler, everyone. You pass through the Great Hall, where echoes of past arguments linger like cologne. One corner still smells like burnt goat from last week's offering. Another still has a faint dent from where Hera threw a goblet. But throne room isn't just the scene of squabbles, it's a shrine to hierarchy. Zeus at the center, surrounded by his inner circle, including some siblings, some children, and a few that are both. Don't think about it too hard. The moment you focus on sibling rivalry, Hera materializes. Tall, regal, eyes sharp enough to slice marble. She's the goddess of marriage, which is kind of ironic considering her own is basically one long hostile negotiation. Hera is Zeus's sister and wife, because of course. That was common among the gods, though mortals eventually moved away from that tradition, mostly because of how often it ended in divine temper tantrums. Now, Hera wasn't always bitter. Once, she was radiant with hope, married to the king of the gods, ready to reign beside him. But after the fifth nymph, the seventh secret child, and the 143rd lie about just transforming into a swan to help someone, her patience thinned. Understandably, so began the eternal Cold War. Zeus cheats, Hera punishes. Not him, of course. That would be too easy. No, Hera usually targets the women involved, or worse, their children. It's cruel, complicated, and deeply rooted in divine pride. Take Semele, for example, a mortal who caught Zeus's eye. Hera tricked her into demanding to see Zeus in his full god form. Big mistake. The moment Zeus revealed himself, Semele burst into flames. Mortal flesh, divine power, it never ends well. Hera didn't light the match, but she handed over the gasoline. Then there's poor Io, turned into a cow, guarded by a hundred-eyed monster, chased across continents. That wasn't a love story, it was an endurance test. And all because Zeus got distracted. Quirky myth alert. At one point, to hide an affair, Zeus literally turned an entire region of clouds into a decoy version of Hera. That's right, he made a fake wife out of weather. And it still didn't work. Historians still argue whether these myths were meant as cautionary tales, political allegories, or just the ancient Greeks trying to explain why marriage is hard using cosmic metaphors. Whatever the case, Hera became the poster goddess for silent fury and long-term plotting, and yet she's powerful, respected, feared. Mortals prayed to her for safe births, loyal spouses, and strength in courtship. She might burn you alive, but she also bless your wedding vows. Inconsistency is part of the package. Now imagine being Poseidon in this mess, constantly flexing, trying to get attention while Zeus rules the sky and Hera rules the palace. He picks fights. With mortals, with monsters, with entire cities. There's a reason Athens is named after Athena and not Poseidon. Both gods wanted to be patron of the city. Athena offered the olive tree symbol of peace, wisdom, and prosperity. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident and made a saltwater spring. Yeah, the city chose the olives. Poseidon hasn't let it go since. In fact, many scholars point to this myth as a reflection of the city's values. Athena represents strategy and planning. Poseidon, brute force. The olive tree grows slowly but nourishes for centuries. The salt spring? Not so helpful for cooking. You imagine Poseidon pacing his coral palace, still muttering, should have added dolphins, while Athena calmly teaches mortals how to build ships and write poetry. The rivalry between these siblings didn't end with city naming contests. They clashed over lovers, temples, and philosophical differences about what constitutes a reasonable show of power. At one point, Poseidon tried to drown an entire region just to spite Zeus. At another, Zeus chained Hera to the sky for rebelling, and Poseidon threatened to quit Olympus in protest. Sibling drama, but with celestial consequences. You step back, watching the clouds swirl beneath the palace. Lightning flickers on one side, a storm churns on the other, and somewhere below, mortals pray oblivious to the family arguments that shape their destinies. Up here, power isn't just measured in temples or thunderbolts, it's measured in grudges. And the gods? Oh, they keep score. Somewhere behind you, a goblet clinks against stone. You turn just in time to catch the icy stare of Hera as she glides past, robe spotless, posture perfect, judgment radiating from her like divine perfume. There's no shouting, no lightning, just pressure, the quiet kind of fury that simmers over centuries. Because tonight, you're stepping into the story of a marriage held together not by love, but by status, stubbornness, and cosmic blackmail. Hera and Zeus, king and queen, brother and sister, husband and wife. It's complicated. You sit quietly as the room shifts around you. Time slows. Candles burn low. And you begin to understand why the phrase worst family drama might have been invented for these two. Zeus is lounging on his throne, now bare-chested, golden crown slightly askew, thunderbolt resting casually beside him like it's just a very shiny paperweight. He smiles like nothing's wrong, like he didn't just turn into a bull last week and disappear for 2 days. Hera doesn't smile. This isn't love, it's strategy. A divine chess game with emotions as pawns and grudges as queens. Their wedding, by most accounts, was grand. A feast attended by gods, titans, spirits, and possibly a few confused mortals who wandered in. Hera was radiant. Zeus promised loyalty. Birds sang. Flowers bloomed. Cue ominous THUNDERCLAP. Because Zeus's concept of loyalty is flexible, even. During their courtship, he lied to her, turned himself into a helpless bird, shivering in the rain just so Hera would cradle him. The moment she did, boom, god form. Seduction, classic Zeus move. Historians still debate whether this was romantic ingenuity or celestial-level manipulation. Hera probably leans toward the latter, but despite the deception, she married him, and almost immediately regretted it, because Hera didn't marry a god. She married the god, the one everyone defers to, the one whose decisions ripple through heavens and earth. And while she technically held equal rank as Queen of the Gods, her power was often sidelined, except when it was used to clean up Zeus's mess. That's when the grudges began. Grudge number 1, Leto, a titaness who bore Zeus' twins, Apollo and Artemis. Hera banned her from giving birth on any land under the sun, which sounds poetic until you realize Leto had to find a floating island just to deliver. Grudge number 2, Alcmene, a mortal, gave birth to Heracles. Hera made his life a living trial, literally sending serpents to his crib, madness to his mind, and labors to his resume. Grudge number 3, Io, already mentioned, but deserves a callback. Turned into a cow, guarded by a monster, eventually escaped, but not before developing a permanent dislike of clouds. The pattern is clear. Hera never forgets. She doesn't forgive. And she definitely doesn't sit silently while Zeus charms his way through myth after myth. But here's where it gets tricky. Hera's not just a jealous wife trope. That's a modern oversimplification. In ancient worship, she was the goddess of marriage, sovereignty, and divine legitimacy. Cities prayed to her for protection. Women called her name during childbirth. Kings sought her blessing for their reigns. She wasn't spiteful because she lacked power. She was spiteful because she had it and felt it being chipped away. Insult by insult, affair by affair. And Zeus, he didn't stop. He shapeshifted, vanished, reappeared. Swans, bulls, showers of gold. He had more disguises than a mythological James Bond. And every time Hera discovered one, the consequences fell on everyone else. Quirky fact, one of Zeus's disguises involved an ant. Yes, in one myth, he transformed into an ant to seduce Eurymedusa. Why? No one knows. Scholars still argue whether this reflects symbolic fertility, or if Zeus had officially run out of ideas, and yet, despite all this, Hera stayed. Not out of love, though maybe there was some of that buried under millennia of betrayal, but because leaving would mean giving up her throne, her pride, her influence. The Queen of Olympus doesn't quit. She plots, she schemes, she adapts. There's something undeniably human about their dysfunction, the way they circle each other, the cold silences, the public jabs disguised as divine pronouncements, even the occasional teamwork, usually when one of the other gods gets too ambitious and both Zeus and Hera swoop in to remind them who's boss. Because here's the truth. They fight, but no one else gets to challenge them. Their marriage may be chaos, but it's their chaos. And gods forbid anyone else try to interfere. You watch as Zeus pours ambrosia into his cup, then into Hera's with a nod. She accepts it without a word. Somewhere behind her smile, there's thunder. Somewhere behind his smirk, there's guilt he'll never admit. And Olympus, as always, keeps spinning. Mortals look up and see the stars. They pray to Zeus for rain, to Hera for love, not knowing that, above the clouds, those prayers are answered or ignored by a couple too wrapped up in their eternal grudge match to notice. You step back from the balcony, the wind brushing against your skin like a whispered warning. Up here, love is war, and the gods play for keeps. The sun hasn't risen, but the clouds outside Olympus seem to glow faintly, probably because Zeus is in a good mood. And that's dangerous. You wander past another hallway lined with statues, some cracked, some mid-swoon, some mid-roar, and in every corner of this divine palace, there's one story no one dares bring up in front of Hera. all the other stories. Because Zeus, for all his power and titles, simply cannot stop falling in love, or at least falling in lust, with mortals. With nymphs, occasionally with the odd elemental force. Honestly, if it had a pulse or even vaguely resembled something with a pulse, Zeus probably flirted with it. You trail behind a gallery of painted myths, each panel a train wreck in slow motion. There's Leda and the Swan, Europa and the Bull, Danae and the Golden Rain. Yes, rain. Let's not get into the physics of that one. The pattern is painfully clear. Zeus disguises himself, descends to Earth, gets involved, and leaves behind chaos. And usually a baby. Now you might think, surely mortals caught on. But no, they rarely do. Because when a cloud speaks your name in a rich, booming baritone, you're more likely to swoon than suspect divine trickery. One of the strangest entries in Zeus's dating portfolio, a woman named Aegina. He turned into an eagle, snatched her up, and flew her to an island. The island is now named after her, as if a romantic kidnapping is worthy of a travel brochure. Historians still argue whether this was a form of ancient divine branding or just further evidence that Olympus had no HR department. And then there's Callisto, a follower of Artemis, sworn to chastity. Zeus disguised himself as Artemis, yes, impersonating your own daughter's friend, and tricked her. The result? Callisto was banished, turned into a bear, and later placed among the stars as Ursa Major. Which sounds noble, but she's still a bear in the sky. Quirky aside, some ancient Greek poets tried to smooth over these stories, suggesting mortals were honored to receive the gods' attention. Others didn't buy it. A few rare texts even dared to question whether Zeus's behavior was truly divine or just chronically impulsive. And Hera? Oh, she always found out. Not because Zeus confessed, he rarely did, but because consequences always ripple outward. When mortals give birth to demigods, Hera notices. When nymphs disappear, Hera investigates. She doesn't have to catch him in the act. She just waits. Sooner or later, someone starts glowing, shape-shifting, or defying gravity, and boom. Another tantrum. You turn a corner and find a mural of Zeus transforming into a flame to visit Asteria. Or was it an eagle again? No, this one's a satyr. Honestly, it's hard to keep track. The man has more aliases than a spy on the run. And behind every affair, a new child. Heracles, Perseus, Helen of Troy, Minos, the Muses, even some of the lesser-known gods. Zeus's divine family tree is less a tree and more a bramble bush growing in all directions at once. Each child brings gifts, strength, beauty, strategy, but they also bring complications, prophecies, jealousy, mortal mothers who vanish mysteriously, and siblings who glare from thrones, wondering why their half-brother just got a temple built in his honor while they're still waiting on a holiday. Even Athena, who famously sprang from Zeus's head, comes with a story full of weird implications. No mother, no pregnancy, just a headache. One moment, Zeus complains of cranial pressure. The next, his skull splits and out pops Athena, fully armed and adult-sized. Ancient wisdom meets migraine. That's Zeus in a nutshell. Everything dramatic, everything divine. Nothing simple. Still, people adored him. They built statues, temples, offered goats and prayers. To be fair, he could be generous. He brought rain to farmers, justice to kings, and the occasional lightning bolt to arrogant liars. But the devotion he received wasn't just about gratitude. It was fear, awe, the sense that no matter how flawed he was, no other god had his weight. Modern scholars debate this legacy. Was Zeus the product of patriarchal myth-making? A narrative tool to explain the chaos of the world? Or was he simply the Greeks' way of saying, hey, even the sky makes mistakes sometimes? You wander past a cracked pedestal where a statue of Zeus used to stand. It's missing now, probably toppled during one of Hera's more expressive reactions, and you think maybe that's the real myth. Not that Zeus loved too much or too recklessly, but that no one ever held him accountable, not mortals, not gods, not even time. But here's the twist. Every affair, every betrayal, every thunderstorm of consequences, it all fed the myths, gave them shape. Stories need conflict, drama, regret, and in that sense, Zeus wasn't a king. He was a plot device in sandals. You take a breath and listen. Somewhere far below Olympus, a bard is singing, a story of gods and mortals, love and lightning. And someone, somewhere, is just starting to realize their mysterious suitor is suspiciously glowing. The cycle begins again. The corridors of Olympus twist like a dream now, hallways folding into each other, columns leading nowhere, doors that open into nothing but clouds. You drift past them, the marble cool beneath your steps, until you reach a chamber unlike the others. There's no thunder here, no perfume of ambrosia or whispered grudge, just a faint hum, a soft gold light, and a large bronze statue cracked clean through the center. This is where you meet Athena. And like everything else in Zeus's complicated legacy, her story begins with pain. Specifically head pain. Zeus had another problem, you see. He'd swallowed Metis, a titaness and goddess of wisdom, because there was a prophecy. As always, the prophecy said she'd give birth to a child more powerful than him. And if there's one thing Zeus hates more than accountability, it's competition. So, obviously, his first instinct was to eat her, whole, no chewing. Just gulp. Modern interpretations of this myth range from symbolic to satirical. Some suggest it represents Zeus internalizing wisdom. Others say it's just another example of how the Olympians had zero chill when it came to problem solving. Either way, Metis went in, and time passed. And then came the headache. Not a regular headache, not a tension headache. No, Zeus had a god-tier migraine. The kind that makes you crack open your own skull in search of relief. Enter Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith. Zeus ordered, really, his son to split his head open with an axe. And Hephaestus, who is far too used to weird family requests, did exactly that. The result? Athena, fully grown, fully armored, sprung from his head like a war cry wrapped in strategy. No screaming, no crying, just immediate intellectual superiority, and the distinct look of someone who already knows. She's smarter than everyone in the room. You watch as she steps forward, now tall, calm, eyes like polished marble. She doesn't flaunt her power. She doesn't flirt or rage. She simply is. Precision in a robe. Logic with a spear. She's the goddess of wisdom, yes, but also of war strategy, law, crafts, and pretty much anything involving brains over brawn. While Ares charges into battle swinging wildly, Athena plans the ambush, counts the arrows, and calculates the retreat before the first sword is drawn. Which brings us to Ares, her half-brother, and her perfect opposite. You hear him before you. See him distant clangs, a grunted insult, the sound of someone flexing unnecessarily. Ares, god of war. The kind of war that's messy, loud, and personal. If Athena is the general, Ares is the guy throwing punches in the mud. The two never get along. In fact, during the Trojan War, Athena helped the Greeks. Ares backed the Trojans. She outsmarted him multiple times, usually with a smirk and minimal effort. In one myth, she even knocks him out with a well-placed rock. From behind. Classic older sibling move. And the gods? They all kind of hate Ares. Even Zeus, his own father, calls him the most detestable of the gods, which is saying something in this crowd. Quirky fact: despite being the god of war, Ares is actually pretty bad at it. He's constantly wounded, outmaneuvered, or humiliated. In one myth, he gets caught in bed with Aphrodite trapped in a golden net by her husband Hephaestus and mocked by the entire pantheon. Like, literally laughed at while still entangled. Scholars still debate whether Ares was a product of older, bloodier traditions that the later Greeks grew uncomfortable with, or if he was simply the punchline the myths needed a cautionary tale about rage without thought. Athena, on the other hand, remains consistently respected, even feared. She never marries, never has children. She's not cold, exactly, but she's deliberate. And that makes her dangerous. You pass under a ceiling. Mural of her birth. Zeus clutching his head, Athena leaping forth, the other gods looking mildly alarmed. Some versions of the myth say she screamed a war cry so loud it shook Olympus. Others say she was silent, stepping calmly into existence like she had a to-do list ready. Either way, the message is clear. Athena wasn't born to play second to anyone, and yet there's a shadow behind her legend. A rivalry with another woman, a mortal, a weaver named Arachne. Arachne was gifted, too gifted. People praised her weaving as divine. She disagreed, said she was better than the gods. Athena, not one to ignore a challenge, appeared to her in disguise and offered a contest. Both wove. Athena's tapestry was flawless, depicting the glory of the gods. Arachne's was also flawless, but told stories of divine cruelty, betrayal, and hypocrisy. It was true, but it was offensive truth. Athena, enraged but also unable to fault the work, tore the tapestry to shreds and turned Arachne into a spider, an eternal weaver. A reminder: don't challenge the gods, even with facts. You reach the end of the chamber. Now, the bronze statue of Athena flickers with soft candlelight. Her spear points upward, not toward war, but toward reason. Her shield bears the face of Medusa, another myth for another long night. And as you turn to leave, a gust of wind brushes past. It feels like approval or warning. With Athena, it's hard to tell, because even on Olympus, even among immortals, some gods don't shout. They calculate. They wait, and when they act, it's final. There's a shift in the air, now less sharp, more clunky. You hear the faint clang of armor, the scrape of bronze on stone, and the heavy-footed entrance of someone who doesn't bother with grace. Ares is here. He marched in like he's arriving at a battlefield, even though it's just a hallway. His armor gleams, freshly polished. His helmet, slightly too dramatic. And his expression? A permanent scowl, like someone who just lost a fight, but insists he let the other guy win. You step aside as he stomps past, muttering about respect and cowards. Welcome to the life of Ares, god of war and arguably the least respected member of the Olympian crew. Ares embodies the chaos of battle, the shouting, the blood, the confusion. Not strategy, not purpose, just raw, unfiltered rage. He doesn't win wars. He doesn't plan them. He simply enjoys the feeling of them. And the rest of the gods? They're not fans. Even Zeus, who isn't exactly a model of moral consistency, calls Ares a two-faced liar and says he's only tolerated because he's technically his son. Technically. You get the sense Zeus regrets that part sometimes. Then there's Athena, who basically wins every debate and every war game, and she can't stand him. Their rivalry is legendary. She sees him as reckless, selfish, and loud. He sees her as smug, uptight, and always stealing his thunder. Literally, One of their most famous showdowns happened during the Trojan War. Ares sided with the Trojans, Athena with the Greeks, and at one point she helps a mortal Diomedes stab Ares with a spear. Not metaphorically. Actually, the god of war, wounded by a human. He screams, flies to Olympus, and complains to Zeus like a child reporting a scraped knee. Quirky aside, the ancient Romans loved Ares. Well, their version Mars was. Rebranded as disciplined, noble, and essential to empire building. But in Greece, Ares was that one cousin you keep inviting to family dinners because he technically is family, but you pray he doesn't show up. And yet, despite the mockery, the wounds, and the eye rolls, Ares keeps showing up. Because deep down, he believes. He's important. War is important. Even if it's not elegant. Even if it's not wise. In the end, someone always bleeds. And that's where Ares thrives. You follow him now into a smaller chamber, one clearly not decorated by Athena. It's full of battered shields, cracked swords, and the smell of dried sweat and pride. This is Ares' version of a throne room. No gold, no art, just trophies from fights someone most simply survived. And standing beside him, a figure in a perfectly disheveled chiton, smirking, watching Ares rant. This is Aphrodite. Yes, that Aphrodite. Goddess of love, beauty, seduction, and possibly 85% of all ancient Greek drama. She's not here to fight. She's here because Ares is somehow her favorite mistake. Their relationship is complicated. Ares is passion. Aphrodite is allure. Together, they create a whirlwind of obsession, jealousy, and whispered temple gossip. But here's the twist: Aphrodite is married to Hephaestus. And no, she didn't choose him. The gods decided it would balance her out. As if marrying the quiet blacksmith would calm the storm that is Aphrodite. It didn't. So she turns to Ares, loud, brooding, always ready to throw a punch in her name. They sneak around Olympus like teenagers who think they're being discreet. But the gods see everything. Eventually, Hephaestus sets a trap literally. He crafts an invisible net and catches the lovers in the act, then calls the other gods to witness. Yes, it's a divine sting operation. Ancient myth meets reality TV. Quirky. Fact, in Homer's Odyssey, this moment is described in detail, and the other gods actually laugh. Except for the goddesses, who refuse to attend. Possibly out of solidarity. Possibly because even they're tired of the drama. And yet, Aphrodite doesn't care. She keeps seeing Ares. She keeps defying expectations. In some versions, their union produces Eros, god of desire, and Harmonia, goddess of harmony. Irony? Definitely. Historians still debate whether Aphrodite and Ares represent a philosophical duality, love and war, attraction and conflict, chaos and creation. Others argue it's just another example of gods behaving like teenagers with cosmic power. But there's something human here. Ares, so desperate to be taken seriously, finds validation in being chosen by her. And Aphrodite, worshipped for her looks and charm, chooses passion over duty. It's messy, unstable, but undeniably real. You step away from the clanging, from the whispers, from the scent of roses and rust. Behind you, Ares slams his shield against a wall, while Aphrodite blows him a kiss and disappears in a shimmer of silk. And you think, maybe that's why Ares endures. Not because he wins, but because he feels, loudly, recklessly, honestly. The gods may laugh, but he never hides. The scent of roses fades, replaced by the soft hush of sea air, and you find yourself standing at the edge of a marble balcony, staring out at waves far below. The sky glows pink for no reason at all. Something about this place feels slower, warmer, as if time itself is hesitating not, and then she arrives. Not with trumpets or lightning, not with a chariot or entourage, just a gentle ripple in the breeze, and suddenly you understand why entire cities once built temples to a smile. Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, desire, and mild emotional chaos. Her presence is strange on Olympus, not because she doesn't belong, but because no one's entirely sure where she came from. Unlike the other gods, whose origins involve titans, caves, or suspiciously timed headaches, Aphrodite just appeared. Out of sea foam. Specifically, from the foam produced when Cronus tossed his father Uranus's severed parts into the ocean. Yes, that sea foam. Romantic, right? Historians still argue about this. Some say she's older than Zeus, part of the ancient Titan generation. Others claim she's the daughter of Zeus and Dione. Either way, her arrival is treated like a sunrise, sudden, stunning, and completely impossible to ignore. You watch her step across the courtyard, and the air itself seems to sigh. Flowers bloom, birds sing. Even the marble columns stand a little taller, as if trying to impress her. Aphrodite doesn't walk, she glides. Like a daydream on sandals. And the gods? They panicked when she arrived, because beauty is dangerous, especially divine beauty. So to keep the peace, Zeus quickly married her off to Hephaestus, god of fire, forge, and unfortunate social skills. The logic? She's too beautiful to be single. Let's pair her with the least threatening option. Quirky aside, Hephaestus was born lame, and some myths say Hera, embarrassed, flung him off Olympus the moment he was born. Others say Zeus did it during a marital spat. Either way, he landed in the sea, was raised by ocean nymphs, and grew up crafting wonders no god could rival. So yes, Aphrodite's husband could build you a golden palace. But romance? Not exactly his specialty, which is where Ares enters again. Passionate, bold, terrible at poetry, probably, but committed. Their affair becomes the worst-kept secret on Olympus. Everyone knows. No one says anything until Hephaestus does. You remember the net, the trap, the public humiliation. And yet, Aphrodite never flinched. She just kept being herself, unapologetically adored. But there's more to her than beauty. Aphrodite represents all forms of love: romantic, obsessive, spiritual, inconvenient. She's the force that bends reason, starts wars, and makes mortals ruin their lives for a glance. Helen of Troy? Aphrodite promised her to Paris as a bribe in exchange for being named the fairest goddess. That little deal led to the Trojan War. 10 years of bloodshed, all rooted in one divine beauty pageant gone wrong. Historians still debate whether Aphrodite was seen as empowering or destabilizing. Was she a symbol of feminine force, or a cautionary tale wrapped in eyeliner and charm? You walk through her private sanctuary, now walls painted in soft blues and pinks, a fountain murmuring in the center, and golden doves cooing from the rafters. It feels human, warm, unlike the cold perfection of Zeus's throne or the tactical clutter of Athena's library. This space is personal, alive. You pause by a pedestal holding her magic belt, the cestus, a simple-looking sash that, when worn, makes the wearer irresistibly attractive. She lends it out sometimes. Never to Hera, though. That request was denied, and the gods do ask. Even mortals pray to her for love, desire, children, or sometimes just a good date. But here's the twist. Love doesn't mean peace, and Aphrodite's children are proof. There's Eros, god of desire, armed with arrows that cause chaos and inconvenient crushes. Some myths say he's a primordial being, older than all the gods. Others say he's just her moody teenage son. Either way, he's not one to follow orders. And then there's Harmonia, goddess of harmony, born from Aphrodite and Ares, because even chaos sometimes births calm. But Aphrodite's legacy isn't just in her children or lovers. It's in the ripple effect of every emotion she stirs. She doesn't force mortals to love. She just opens the door, and what they do with it, that's on them. You stand beneath a statue of her now delicate serene, arms outstretched not in command, but invitation. And you realize something the poets always understood. Aphrodite isn't just about lust, she's about want. The ache, the hope, the vulnerability of opening your heart, even when it's a terrible idea. And that, maybe, is her real power. She doesn't throw thunder. She doesn't invent war horses or cunning traps. But she doesn't have to. She lets others do all that for her. The most dangerous god isn't the one who fights. It's the one who makes others fight for her. And Aphrodite? She's undefeated. As you leave Aphrodite's sanctuary, the light changes. Warmer tones fade into brass and soot. The marble beneath your feet grows darker, scorched in places, humming faintly with heat. You follow the sound of metal striking metal rhythmic. Patient, stubborn, and step into the forge of Hephaestus. It's a strange corner of Olympus. Tucked away, half-lit by molten glow and candle stubs. No grand pillars. No perfumes. Just the scent of iron, fire, and long, slow work. Hephaestus doesn't look up at first. His focused face smeared with ash, hammer swinging in steady arcs. Sparks fly, casting strange shadows across the walls. You feel like an intruder. And yet, not unwelcome. Here's the thing. Hephaestus isn't loud. He doesn't thunder. He doesn't seduce. He creates. And in a world full of ego, chaos, and shouting matches disguised as diplomacy, that makes him different. Maybe even lonely. He was born, according to most myths, with a limp. Imperfect by divine standards. Some say Hera hurled him from Olympus, in disgust the moment she saw him. Others say it was Zeus, angry at him for defending Hera during one of their infamous spats. Either way, he fell. Down, down, landing in the sea, broken and alone. But he survived. And from the depths, he rose again, nursed back by sea nymphs, taught by trial. He built his own palace under a volcano, filling it with self-moving machines and metal sculptures so intricate. Even the gods were stunned. That quirky aside, Hephaestus is credited with creating the first automatons, bronze robots that could walk, serve wine, or guard his workshop. So yes, ancient Greek mythology includes early sci-fi. Eventually, he returned to Olympus, not as a cast-off, but as a craftsman. The craftsman. He forged Zeus's thunderbolts, Athena's shield, Hermes' winged sandals. Even the chain that held Prometheus to the mountain was his handiwork, which in a deeply passive-aggressive way means that most divine vengeance passed through his anvil first. And yet, for all his talent, he was handed the rawest deal in the godly dating pool, a political marriage to Aphrodite. Let's be honest, it was never going to work. She didn't choose him. She barely pretended to love him. And he knew it. You pause beside one of his work tables littered with scraps of gold, half-finished goblets, a sword hilt glowing faintly with runes. The tools here aren't magical. They're just precise, clean, honest. Unlike the rest of Olympus, Hephaestus doesn't throw fits. He doesn't command storms. He just waits, watching, listening, crafting things that gods will one day use to betray each other. which makes his trap for Aphrodite and Ares even more chilling. Not just a net, but a perfect net, unbreakable, invisible, sprung mid-moment. With all the timing of a man who doesn't forget, he doesn't scream when he catches them. He simply calls the other gods to witness. A quiet, "I told you so," with a side of eternal humiliation. Scholars still debate what this myth says. Was it a tale of revenge? An ancient lesson in shame? Or just proof that even the calmest god has his breaking point? After that, Hephaestus didn't ask for love. He asked for respect, and mortals gave it. Craftsmen, smiths, metalworkers, he became their patron. Not because he ruled with fear or beauty, but because he understood the value of hard work and imperfection. He's the only god who earns his place. Hammerstroke by hammerstroke. No inherited throne. No stormy legacy. Just smoke, sweat, and patience. You look up now, and he finally meets your gaze. There's a flicker of weariness in his eyes, not sadness, just acceptance of his role, of his solitude, of the irony that the god who makes everything beautiful is never seen that way himself. And yet, this is where Olympus rests. On his work, his weapons, his tools. The world spins, wars rage, lovers argue, and still Hephaestus forges. You step back as he turns to his anvil again. Another blade, another artifact, another chapter, quietly shaped in the fire dot because in the end, not all gods shout. Some of them simply build. There's a different kind of rhythm now. Less the metallic clang of Hephaestus's forge, and more like footsteps on temple stone measured. Elegant, and just a bit too perfect to be entirely casual. You follow the sound through the inner courts of Olympus toward a sun-drenched veranda where the breeze smells like laurel and fresh citrus. Two figures stand ahead, framed against the golden sky. Twins, beautiful, radiant, slightly terrifying. You've just walked in on a sibling. Rivalry that's been simmering for centuries. Apollo and a RTEM, Is. Born on the same day, to the same mother, Leto, and the same inevitably unfaithful father, Zeus. Their birth itself was a struggle. Hera, furious as usual, forbade any land under the sun from sheltering Leto. So Leto wandered, pregnant, exhausted, until she found the floating island of Delos, a loophole, technically not land under the sun. There, she gave birth to Artemis. First Dot and Artemis didn't just arrive, she helped deliver her brother, a newborn delivering another newborn. Efficiency goals. Apollo came next. And from that moment, the balance was set. Two sides of the same divine coin. Light and dark. Sun and moon. Music and silence. Order and wildness. Bragging rights everywhere. Apollo is the god of music, prophecy, archery, healing, and depending. On the century plague, also poetry, also the sun, also extremely high opinions of himself. He walks like someone with a mirror in every room. His lyre is always perfectly tuned. His tunic somehow never wrinkles. And don't even get him started on mortals who dare perform music near him. Quirky fact: once, a satyr named Marsyas challenged Apollo to a music contest. Big mistake. When Apollo won, he flayed Marsyas alive, just to drive the point home. Literally, scholars still shudder when they teach that one. Artemis, on the other hand, is quiet power. Goddess of the hunt, wilderness, childbirth, and chastity. She doesn't flirt, she doesn't brag. She just appears bow in hand, hounds at her feet, eyes like moonlight on snow. She rules the night the way Apollo claims the day. And unlike her brother, she doesn't need an audience, but make no mistake, Artemis is not soft. She once turned immortal hunter Actaeon into a stag for accidentally seeing her bathing, then let his own dogs tear him apart. Modesty redefined. Historians still debate whether Artemis was a symbol of feminine independence, a remnant of older matriarchal goddesses, or simply a narrative reminder. Respect boundaries, especially divine ones. The twins love each other, of course, fiercely, but like all siblings, they compete. Who has more temples? Who gets more festivals? Who has the cooler chariot? Apollo, ever the golden boy, boasts endlessly about his oracle at Delphi. Mortals travel for miles just to hear vague riddles from his priestesses. And yes, he definitely takes credit for every accurate prophecy. Artemis counters by never needing praise. She roams the forests with her all-female hunt, answers prayers from women in labor, and protects young girls with a kind of maternal fire that's anything but gentle. Their energies clash often. Apollo craves order, predictability. Artemis thrives in mystery, in the unknowable silence of the woods. You suspect family dinners get tense, but nothing compares to the time Apollo tricked Artemis into killing someone she loved. His name was Orion, a mortal hunter who, depending on the version you read, was either a loyal companion or the love of her life. Artemis adored him, so Apollo got jealous. Maybe of the attention, maybe of her softening heart dots, so he challenged her to a contest. Told her to shoot a distant object floating in the sea. She did. She never missed Dot, and when the tide rolled in, she realized she'd killed Orion. Some myths say she placed him among the stars out of guilt. Orion, the hunter constellation. Others say she never forgave Apollo. That's the thing about divine siblings. They don't outgrow the drama. They immortalize it. You stand between them now, Apollo radiant, Artemis cool, and feel the tension. Not anger, just contrast. He radiates, she reflects. He speaks, she listens. He commands, she watches. And yet, together, they create balance. When mortals look to the heavens, they see both. The sun to guide their steps, the moon to guard their dreams. Because even among gods, some rivalries don't end in war. They just last forever. The wind carries music, now not just any music, but something oddly precise and playful. A little flute, a laugh tucked into a breeze, the distant jingle of sandals too light to belong to anyone serious. You follow the sound, and just like that, you're in motion. Through marble corridors, under ivy-wrapped archways, past bored guards who blink and suddenly find their helmets missing. This part of Olympus doesn't stand still, it moves. Or more accurately, he moves it. Hermes. You spot him crouched on a ledge, lacing up his winged sandals like a track star who knows he'll win, even if he doesn't try. His traveler's cap is tilted jauntily, and he's got that grin mischief bottled up behind impeccable cheekbones. He sees you before you see him, obviously. He always does. Hermes is the god of travelers, merchants, thieves, athletes, jokes that go too far, and messages no one asked for. Also pickpocketing, also boundaries. He's the one you pray to when you're running late, or crossing a border, or trying to lie just well enough to avoid consequences. And he's busy. Always busy, delivering dreams, stealing cows, guiding souls to the underworld, pranking mortals and immortals alike. If Olympus had a postal service, Hermes would run it, then steal it, then resell it at a profit. Quirky origin tale? When Hermes was barely a day old, he snuck out of his crib, found Apollo's sacred cattle, reversed their footprints to hide the trail, and stole them. Then he invented the lyre out of a tortoiseshell and played a song so charming that Apollo forgave him. In fact, Apollo gave him his own herds in exchange. That's how good Hermes is at talking his way out of trouble. Historians still debate whether Hermes reflects the ancient Greeks' admiration for wit and adaptability, or if he was simply the personification of "we need a god for everything else." Either way, he became the go-to figure for all things in motion messages, money, negotiations, and subtle chaos. You trail him now through the marketplace of Olympus, which, yes, even gods need: stalls of glowing fruit, wine that ages backward, scrolls that write themselves. Hermes weaves through them effortlessly, occasionally flipping a coin into the air and catching it behind someone else's ear. He doesn't rule Olympus. He greases it, makes it function, carries gossip, smooths deals, warns mortals in dreams, and when a soul dies, he escorts it down to Hades, not grimly, not mournfully, just dutifully. Hermes doesn't judge. He simply moves you from one state to the next. That's his real power. Transition between life and death, truth and lie. Here and there, you ask him softly if he ever stays still. He laughs, hops onto a pedestal, and tosses you an answer. Stillness is for statues, then vanishes. The pedestal is empty. Your sandals are missing. Typical. You wander through the corridor where Hermes was, and pass murals that shift depending on where you're standing. One moment, he's helping Zeus woo a mortal. The next, he's slipping a sleeping potion into a guard's drink. The next, he's just watching, waiting for someone to say something he can twist into a joke. But for all his chaos, Hermes is trusted. Perhaps more than any other god. Why? Because he doesn't take sides. He's loyal only to the function, the message, the journey. He serves Zeus, sure, but he's helped mortals just as often, sometimes even in defiance of Olympus's more dramatic agendas. Take Odysseus. Stranded, cursed, manipulated by multiple gods. Hermes intervenes, hands him a magical herb to resist Circe's spell, and tells him how to survive. Just ... Like that or Perseus, heading off to behead Medusa. Hermes lends him sandals, a sickle, a helmet. Tools for a story that might not have been possible without him. In a world of divine egos, Hermes is practical. He doesn't waste time on grudges or golden thrones. He moves, fast, smart, sideways, if necessary. You find your sandals, neatly returned near a column with your name carved into it by a hand too fast to catch. He's already gone, probably halfway to the mortal world, whispering dreams into someone's ear or redirecting a storm cloud for comedic timing. And you realize, while the other gods fight for power, for love, for vengeance, Hermes plays a different game. One of movement, momentum, wit, survival. He may not throw thunderbolts or rule the seas, but when the gods need something done, someone convinced, someone quietly dealt with, they don't call Zeus, they call Hermes, and he always answers. The moment Hermes vanishes, a different kind of energy settles in. Not fast, not chaotic, but loose, soft around the edges, like the world's had a little too much wine and now just wants to talk about feelings. You follow the trail broken. Goblets, wilted flower garlands, the faint sound of laughter that might also be crying, and stumble into a courtyard that's half party, half hallucination. Ivy wraps around marble like it grew overnight. Music plays from instruments with no hands to hold them. And in the center, sprawled across a reclining couch woven from grapevines, is Dionysus. You blink. He doesn't. Dionysus, the god of wine. Ecstasy, ritual madness, theater, and everything that feels like too much, but also kind of perfect. His eyes gleam like someone who knows all your secrets and what drink to pair with them. He offers you a cup before you ask. You take it. It tastes like memories you haven't made yet. See, Dionysus wasn't supposed to be here. He's the outsider god, the latecomer. the one who wasn't born into Olympus, but clawed his way in anyway, bringing his wild cults loud. Rituals and inconvenient truths with him, his mother, semi-immortal, tricked by Hera into asking Zeus to reveal himself in full divine form. The result? Instant incineration. Mortals and thunder don't mix. But Zeus saved the unborn Dionysus by sewing him into his thigh. Yes, his thigh, which makes Dionysus the only god born. Twice, historians still argue whether Dionysus's myths were absorbed from older, non-Greek traditions, Thracian maybe, or if his story reflects deeper cultural anxieties about excess, about loss of control, about what happens when you let go, because Dionysus isn't just a party god. He's the edge of sanity, the line between civilization and instinct. He tears down boundaries, literally, in his cult rituals. The Bacchanalia followers danced wildly, often masked, sometimes armed, always entranced. It was liberation and fear. You wander past statues draped in ivy. Some are smiling, some screaming. No one here is entirely sober, emotionally or otherwise, and yet Dionysus is deeply loved. Mortals adore him, artists worship him. Even the gods, wary as they are, can't deny his charm. He brought theater to Athens. He softened the hearts of tyrants. He traveled the world, teaching joy and loss with equal conviction. Quirky aside, on one of his travels, he was kidnapped by pirates. They thought he was just a rich, pretty boy. Big mistake. The moment they tried to bind him, the ropes fell away. Vines grew from the ship's mast. Wine flooded the deck. The pirates jumped overboard and were turned into dolphins. It's a very specific revenge, but memorable. Dionysus smirks now as if he remembers. He probably does. You sit beside him as the party murmurs on. No one speaks above a whisper. No one seems entirely awake or asleep. This is Dionysus's space between states, between selves. Here, you're not expected to be rational. You're expected to feel. Loudly, sloppily, completely. And that's the secret, isn't it? Where Apollo demands perfection and order, Dionysus offers freedom. Messy, emotional, cathartic freedom. The kind that comes with laughing until you cry, or dancing until your feet forget your name. They're opposites, those two. Apollo and Dionysus. Reason and passion. And yet they're often worshipped together. Because even the Greeks knew you need both. One to build the world. One to remind you why you're living in it. You glance around the courtyard and realize that half the guests aren't even gods. They're mortals, spirits, dreams. Dionysus's domain doesn't care for hierarchy. If you've ever lost yourself in music, in grief, in love, you've already stepped into his temple. He raises his cup now, not in toast, in recognition. You, here, awake, but not fully, listening, wandering. That's all he ever asks. You leave before the wine gets too strong. Or maybe you don't. Time is weird here. And Dionysus doesn't mind. He'll be right where you left him. Laughing, weeping, offering another cup. And behind his eyes, something ancient watches. Because even madness has a memory. The air grows still as you wander away from Dionysus's ivy-laced haze. The party sounds fade into nothing. No lyres, no laughter, no sandals skipping across marble. Just silence, vast and heavy, like the pause between heartbeats. You follow it, not because it calls to you, but because everything else has stopped. Ahead, a stone archway crumbles gently with time. The floor is colder now, the air tinged with wheat, ash, and grief. And just beyond that arch, standing, tall with bare feet pressed into soil, is Demeter, She doesn't turn as you approach. She doesn't need to. Her presence is so grounded, so immovable, that you already feel like you've interrupted something sacred. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest, of agriculture, of the quiet, patient miracle of things growing when they're supposed to. She doesn't raise thunder or raise armies. She raises crops and sometimes hell, because tonight you've arrived at the darkest moment in her myth. Her daughter Persephone is missing. You wouldn't think a grain goddess could shake Olympus. But then again, you wouldn't think a mother, stripped of her child, would make the whole earth go cold. The story goes like this. Persephone, light-footed and curious, was gathering flowers when the ground split open. Hades emerged in his shadowy chariot and took her down deep into the underworld. He said it was marriage. Everyone else said it was kidnapping. And when Demeter found the field empty, she didn't cry. She stopped everything. The world dimmed. Crops failed. Trees withered. Winter, real winter, fell on a land that had never known such hunger. Mortals died. Priests begged. Gods argued. And still, Demeter refused to let the sun return until her daughter did. Quirky fact, Demeter disguised herself and wandered among mortals for months, grieving. At one point, she tried to make a noblewoman's infant immortal by anointing it with fire. The mother panicked. The child lived, but without the gift. A reminder, even kindness from gods has strange edges. Eventually, Zeus intervened, not because he missed Persephone, but because mortals were perishing. No offerings, no prayers. The whole celestial economy was collapsing. So he sent Hermes fast-talking, fast-flying to fetch her. But here's the twist. Persephone, down in the underworld, had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds. 6. And there's a rule eternal and unbending that anyone who eats food in the underworld must stay. So a compromise was struck. 6 seeds. 6 months. Persephone would return to her mother each spring and summer. But for autumn and winter, she would reign beside Hades, queen of the underworld. And that's why the seasons change. Historians still debate whether this myth is agricultural allegory explaining crop cycles or a deeper commentary on grief, on womanhood, on the balance between light and dark. Maybe all three, but Demeter doesn't speak in allegories. She simply feels. Fully. You watch her now, standing in her field of stone and ash. She presses her hand into the earth, and just like that, something green pokes through. A single blade of barley, fragile, stubborn. A mother's hope. Persephone returns soon, and when she does, Demeter will smile again. Briefly, the world will warm. The trees will bloom. Bread will rise, but not yet. You pause, and for the first time, she turns toward you. Her eyes aren't divine, they're human. Tired. Endless. You nod. She DOESN single quotes to . Because in this moment, even gods are just parents waiting by the door, holding on to a season they can't keep. You follow the roots of Demeter's grief down deeper than Olympus, deeper than memory, until the golden light of the gods gives way to something colder, older, quieter. Stone ceilings press low, shadows stretch long. The air tastes like iron. And stillness. You have arrived at the underworld, and standing at its gate, cloaked in black so deep it swallows the light, is Hades. He doesn't notice you at first. Or maybe he does and simply doesn't care. That's the thing about Hades. He isn't cruel. He's just busy, meticulous, removed. The god of the dead doesn't rule with wrath or spectacle. He rules with paperwork. This isn't the hell of modern imagination. No flames, no pitchforks, no endless screaming. The ancient Greeks didn't believe in good or evil afterlives, just placement. You die. You go here. And Hades makes sure it happens on time. He steps aside as souls shuffle past, quiet, translucent, vaguely confused. Some whisper, some look back. None protest. They know their time is up, and Hades, god of order, makes sure the transition is smooth, efficient, quirky. Aside, the word Hades originally referred to the place, not the person. Later, they blurred, which makes sense. He and his kingdom are one and the same. Impersonal, vast, necessary. He wears no crown, no armor, just a ring of keys and a gaze that weighs you without judgment. Even the other gods tread lightly here, which is ironic because among Zeus and Poseidon's stormy egos, Hades might be the most reliable of the three brothers. He doesn't meddle in mortal wars. He doesn't chase nymphs. He doesn't host lavish feasts. He just keeps everything running. His one indulgence, Persephone. Their story is still debated. Was it love, abduction, a dark union, or a misunderstood partnership? What's certain is this: when she's here, the halls brighten slightly. Not with sunlight, there is no sun, but with movement. Flowers that grow in the dark. A stillness that feels less like silence and more like peace. You pass. A field of asphodel where average souls wander aimlessly, neither punished nor rewarded. Beyond it lies the Elysian Fields, a paradise for heroes. And somewhere deeper still, Tartarus, where the truly wicked are bound in endless punishment. But Hades, he oversees all of it. Even-handed, unflinching, mortals fear him, of course. They fear death, but they rarely pray to him. Unlike other gods, he's not worshipped with music or incense, but with silence. With stones placed carefully on graves. With names whispered rather than sung. You step into his palace built of obsidian, soundless beneath your feet. The walls are lined with glowing minerals. There are no mirrors, no laughter. Just corridors that lead to destinies already written. He's not lonely, exactly. Just alone. Sometimes he plays host to the other gods. Reluctantly, Hermes stops by, usually with a soul in tow. Dionysus once wandered in, drunk, and tried to brighten the place up. It did not go well. Even Zeus avoids visiting unless absolutely necessary. There's a mutual understanding. Hades keeps the balance. The dead stay dead. The past stays quiet, and Olympus stays intact. Historians still argue whether Hades was demonized later by Christian writers, perhaps, or if he was simply too neutral to inspire affection. Either way, the modern world misunderstands him, because here's the truth. He's not the villain. He never was. He didn't start wars. He didn't betray his brothers. He just claimed his realm, then spent eternity tending to it. No thrones to compete over. No thunderbolts to hurl. Just the knowledge that everything, every god, every mortal, every memory eventually ends here. You find a quiet bench near the river Lethe, where souls sip forgetfulness before fading into rebirth. The boat of Charon passes by in the distance, ferrying the newly arrived. And Hades? He stands at the dock, checking names, crossing them off. Not cruel, not kind. Just doing the job no one else wants, because someone has to. You step back into the living world now, or at least somewhere between Olympus and memory. The marble beneath your feet feels warmer again. The sky returns a patchwork of stars blinking overhead like they've been watching this whole time. But don't get too comfortable, because Zeus has been busy again. And by busy, we mean romantically impulsive in a way that makes Olympus HR wish it had more staff. Tonight, you're tracing the aftermath, not of one grand affair, but of many. Specifically, the mortal children Zeus leaves in his wake. The demigods, the half-god, half-human hybrids who inherit both divine promise and divine drama. You wander through a long hallway, portraits carved into stone, each depicting a different face, each one glowing slightly, each one with a different story, theirs. Heracles, of course, you can't miss him. Muscles, lion skin, awkwardly holding a club like he doesn't quite know where to put it during family dinners. Hera made his life miserable, not because of him, but because of Zeus. 12 labors, one snake-infested crib, and a lifetime of tests designed to break him, and yet he succeeded. That's the thing about Zeus's kids. They're often forged by hardship, sculpted into legends through trials no mortal should survive. Next up, Perseus, born from Danae, who Zeus visited as a shower of golden light. Yes, again with the shape-shifting. Perseus went on to slay Medusa and accidentally invent reflective eyewear. Quirky aside, that golden light seduction thing? Ancient scholars weren't sure if it was symbolic of divine blessing, or just Zeus running out of animal disguises and resorting to weather phenomena. Then there's Helen of Troy. Some myths say she was Zeus's daughter, two hatched from an egg after he seduced Leda in the form of a swan. The result? A face that launched 1,000 ships. No pressure. You pause beside a lesser-known figure, Amphion, twin brother of Zethus, musically gifted, able to move stones with song. Literally built the walls of Thebes using a lyre and some catchy melodies. His divine heritage gave him talent. Tragedy gave him story, but not all of Zeus's mortal children were warriors or builders. Some were just ... cursed, cast out, or ignored entirely, because here's the thing, Zeus may create miracles, but he rarely sticks around for parent-teacher conferences. Most of his children grow up hunted, orphaned, or navigating the very politics that made them exist in the first place. Historians still debate what these myths meant to the Greeks. Were they tools of propaganda? A way to justify royal bloodlines by claiming descent from Zeus? Or were they cautionary tales reminders that divine favor isn't always a blessing? You think of Semele, burned alive, of Alcmene, hiding Heracles from serpents, of Danae, locked in a tower for daring to be beautiful. And you wonder how much of Olympus is built on stories that begin with longing and end with damage. And yet, the mortals endure. Some, like Heracles, ascend to Olympus. Others fade into legend. Their names etched into temples, their deeds retold by bards, but none of them get peace. Not really. Because being born of a god doesn't shield you from suffering. It guarantees that you step out onto a balcony now, overlooking a valley dotted with flickering campfires. Mortals tiny, fragile, brilliant, telling stories they half remember. About gods, about heroes, about what happens when the divine falls in love with the human. And somewhere in the clouds, Zeus watches not with guilt, not with pride, just curiosity, because for him, love isn't a connection. It's a spark, and sparks burn bright but brief. You step carefully now, back into the golden corridors of Olympus. Though the air feels colder than before, like someone left a window open and a grudge blew in. Because where Zeus leaves chaos, Hera doesn't forget. And this time, gets personal. You're entering the aftermath zone, the long winding corridor of Hera's wrath. And it's not directed at Zeus. No, that would be too easy. Instead, she targets the innocent bystanders. The women, the children, the mortals who had the misfortune of catching Zeus's eye and becoming part of her divine punishment spreadsheet. You begin with Heracles again, because Hera's obsession with tormenting him is practically a trilogy. Remember, this wasn't his fault. He was just born. But to Hera, he represents every broken vow, every humiliation. So she sends snakes to his cradle. Later, she drives him mad, causing him to kill his own family. And then she demands penance through 12 impossible labors. Quirky aside, Heracles eventually marries Hera's daughter. So yes, after a lifetime of suffering at her hands, he ends up as her son-in-law. You can imagine the family dinners. Next, Semele, a mortal who Zeus loved. Hera, dressed in disguise, convinced her to ask Zeus to reveal himself in his full glory. The result? Instant vaporization. Semele became celestial ash, but her unborn child, Dionysus, survived because Zeus stitched him into his thigh. Hera still wasn't happy. She later tried to drive Dionysus mad. Then there's Io. You walk through a gallery of her likenesses. Some show her as a priestess, others as a cow. Yes, a cow. Because after Zeus seduced her, he transformed her into a heifer to hide her from Hera. Didn't work. Hera, feigning innocence, asked for the cow as a gift. Zeus couldn't refuse. Hera then assigned Argus, a god with 100 eyes, to watch Io day and night. Eventually, Hermes killed Argus. Hera, grieving, placed his eyes on the tail of a peacock. Because everything is symbolism here even. Grudges. Wandered the earth, chased by a gadfly Hera sent to sting her endlessly. She crossed continents in bovine misery until finally reaching Egypt, where she was transformed back into a woman and eventually worshipped as a goddess. You exhale. That was one grudge. Then there's Lamia, another of Zeus's lovers. Hera cursed her to devour her own children. Over time, Lamia became a monster of myth, twisted, feared, blamed. But her story started with sorrow. You step through another arch and find yourself in a quiet chamber filled with mirrors. Each one reflects a different woman from these stories. Some weeping, some raging, some just gone. This isn't a hall of shame. It's a hall of collateral damage. Hera's fury is legendary, but it's not random. It's precise. It's cold. She can't hurt Zeus without destabilizing Olympus. But she can hurt those who remind her of every slight, every betrayal, every time she smiled through clenched teeth while Zeus laughed too, loudly at someone else's joke. Historians still argue how to interpret Hera. Is she the cruel, jealous wife? Or the only god who remembers what was promised? Some say she's a symbol of marital strife. Others say she represents the cost of being powerful but not fully in control, because make no mistake, Hera is powerful. She commands marriage, childbirth, queenship. Her symbols, peacocks, scepters, lily, aren't soft. They're loaded. She just isn't loved. Not the way Aphrodite is adored. Not the way Athena is respected. Not the way Artemis is mythologized. But Hera lasts. You pause by a final statue of her head high, crown radiant, eyes set in marble defiance. She's not smiling. She never really is. But she's not falling apart either, because Hera is survival with teeth. And on Olympus, that's harder than lightning. You follow a winding stair, now one that coils around a central column carved with scenes of war, seduction, and fruit. Golden apples, specifically. Shiny, suspicious fruit that glows faintly, even in the shadows. Because tonight, you're heading straight into the myth that started a 10-year war. It begins not with warriors or kingdoms, but with a wedding. A divine one. Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea nymph, fated to bear a child stronger than his father. The gods were invited. All of them except one, Eris, goddess of discord. She wasn't snubbed by accident. The gods knew her reputation. Wherever Eris went, chaos followed. Gossip turned lethal, tempers flared, friendships cracked like old pottery. So, naturally, they left her off the guest list. Big mistake. Quirky fact. Iris didn't crash the wedding with thunder or theatrics. She simply showed up late, slipped a golden apple into the middle of the banquet table, and inscribed 3 words, "To the fairest." That's it. No threats. No demands. Just one shiny piece of bait and the unshakable confidence that someone would take it personally. And oh, did they? Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all reached for the apple. Each sure she deserved it. Each unwilling to back down. It was Divine Mean Girls Eternal Edition. The bickering got so intense, Zeus refused to judge. Smart move. Instead, he appointed a mortal prince to choose, Paris of Troy. Why Paris? Historians still debate this. Some say he was chosen for his fairness. Others say it was just cruel irony throwing a random shepherd into a god-level beauty contest that would shatter empires. So the goddesses descended, not as ideals, but as competitors. Hera offered power kingdoms, riches, a political dynasty. Athena offered wisdom, victory in battle, glory, cleverness beyond mortal understanding. Aphrodite? She offered love, specifically the love of Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, who, inconveniently, was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. Paris chose Aphrodite. The apple was hers. The reward? A love story written in fire. Soon after, Paris visited Sparta, met Helen, and depending on which version you read, either seduced her or kidnapped her. Either way, they left together. And the Greeks, well, they didn't take it well. Thus began the Trojan War. 10 years of bloodshed, all because 3 goddesses had a disagreement and a mortal made the wrong woman feel less than fair. You walk now through a gallery of battle scenes, Achilles raging, Hector falling, ships burning along a smoky coast. But behind it all, the real engine was vanity, jealousy, the need to be seen, and the gods. They didn't just watch. They participated. Athena backed the Greeks. Hera too furious that Paris hadn't chosen her. Aphrodite supported Troy, mostly. Because she had a reputation to maintain, even Ares got involved. He fought on both sides at different points, which feels entirely on brand. The war raged not just between men, but between myths. Olympus split itself in 2, each god dragging their divine weight into a conflict that mortals would pay for, and Zeus? He mostly watched, nudging fate, tweaking winds, occasionally dropping thunder for emphasis. Historians still argue whether he orchestrated it to reduce the mortal population or just found the drama entertaining. You reach the end of the stair, where the apple rests on a pedestal. Not real, obviously, but still glowing, still perfect, still waiting for someone else to reach for it. And you realize the Trojan War wasn't about strategy or empire. It was about feeling ignored, disrespected, slighted. Olympus runs on that. The hunger to be seen, chosen, named fairest. Even gods want to win the vote, and when they don't, mortals burn. You leave behind the smoke of burning ships and descend into a quieter, roomless war, more weaving. The scent of lavender clings to the air, but there's tension here. Not loud, not violent. Just sharp. A loom sits in the center of the space. Gold thread glints across the frame. A tapestry in progress. On one side, scenes of gods in glory, Zeus throwing lightning, Athena guiding heroes, Hera crowned beneath the stars. And on the other, things they'd rather you didn't see. Welcome to the story of Arachne. She was mortal, talented, maybe too talented. Born in Lydia, she wove like no one else images so lifelike, they made people stop breathing. Her fingers moved faster than thought. Her patterns shimmered like illusions. And she knew it. When told her gifts were divine, Arachne didn't blush or demur. She said out loud, "I'm better than Athena." Now you've met Athena. You know how that goes. The goddess of wisdom and war does not take kindly to trash talk, especially in the realm of skill she considers hers. But instead of smiting Arachne instantly, Athena did something different. She gave her a chance. Disguised as an old woman, Athena approached Arachne and warned her, "Humble yourself. Give credit to the gods." Arachne scoffed. "Let her compete." "With me," she said. "Let's see who weaves better." And so, the challenge was accepted. Two looms, 2 women, 1 divine, 1 mortal. Both silent, except for the hush of thread sliding through warp and weft. Athena wove her. Triumphs, glorious depictions of the gods punishing mortals who defied them. Bold, regal, a reminder. Arachne? She wove truth. The misdeeds of the gods. Zeus, disguising himself to seduce mortals. Apollo chasing unwilling women. Poseidon's cruelty. Ares's vanity. She laid it all bare, every betrayal, every abuse, every divine hypocrisy. Quirky aside, some say Arachne's tapestry was so perfect, even the gods couldn't find a single flaw. It wasn't just bold, it was beautiful. Athena saw it, stared at it, said nothing. And then she tore it to pieces, not because it was wrong, but because it was right. Then, depending on which version you believe, she either struck Arachne down or transformed her into a spider out of pity. "Go ahead," she said. "Weave forever." And that's why spiders spin webs. You stand before the loom now. The threads sway slightly, though there's no wind. Somewhere above, a spider hangs in the shadows, watching, spinning, remembering. Historians still debate this myth. Is it a tale of hubris? Mortal arrogance punished by divine justice, or is it something deeper? A commentary on the fear of truth, of voices too clear, too brave, too unafraid to speak against power. Because Arachne wasn't punished for lying. She was punished for showing the gods who they really were. And Athena? She didn't smite her for her insolence. She smote her for her accuracy. You run your fingers along the frayed edge of the tapestry. The thread is soft, but the silence it holds is dense, like something that's trying not to unravel. Because even among gods, reputation matters more than reality. And Arachne? She remembered that too late. The loom fades behind you, thread by thread, until all that's left is a whisper in the stone. You walk on. But the next story doesn't let you go quietly. It waits in a dim hallway lit by flickering torchlight. The shadows move strangely here, not because the flames dance, but because the story does. It shifts, rewrites itself, every version slightly different, every retelling sharpening the edges or softening the sorrow. You're here to face Medusa. Yes, that Medusa. Snake hair, stone gaze, mythic terror. But her story? It wasn't always one of monsters. Medusa was once a mortal woman. Beautiful, dangerously so. In that way Greek myths love to punish. She served as a priestess in Athena's temple, a sacred role requiring chastity and piety. And then came Poseidon. One version says he seduced her. Another, that he attacked her in Athena's temple, the space where she had sworn loyalty, purity, safety. And when Athena found out, she didn't punish Poseidon. She punished Medusa, turned her hair into snakes, cursed her face so that any man who looked at her would turn to stone, banished her to the ends of the earth, isolated, feared, rewritten into something vile. Historians still argue over the meaning here. Was Athena cold, vindictive? Or was this a twisted act of protection, transforming Medusa so no one could ever touch her again? You step into a chamber carved from volcanic stone. There's no light, and yet you see everything. Images burned into the walls, men turning to statues mid-scream, ships frozen mid-wave, eyes wide in terror. But if you look closer behind the monstrous silhouette, you see her Medusa alone, angry but not cruel. She never sought vengeance. She simply defended herself, and for a while that worked. No one dared approach. Until Perseus. He was sent to kill her, a classic heroic quest. Armed with Athena's shield, Hermes' sandals, and a blade sharper than truth, he crept into her cave, didn't look directly, used the reflective shield as a mirror, struck while she slept, took her head, triumphant, glorious, and yet something about it always feels wrong, because Medusa wasn't hunting mortals. She wasn't building an army. She was surviving. The only way she could. And for that, she became a symbol of evil. Quirky aside, even in death, Medusa's head retained power. Perseus used it to turn enemies to stone. Athena later placed it on her shield, the Aegis, as a weapon and warning. So let's recap. A mortal woman, cursed by a goddess after being wronged by a god, hunted by another mortal at the god's request, whose severed head then becomes a symbol of divine authority. Neat. You glance down at the floor beneath you. It's cold, cracked, and in one of the cracks, you think you see a coil of hair shift, or is it a vine? Medusa's story remains tangled. Some modern readings reclaim her, make her a feminist icon, a protector of boundaries. Others still see her as a cautionary tale, a symbol of unchecked rage or unholy transformation. But the one thing no version denies: she never asked for any of this, and when the gods turned her into a monster, she made herself a myth, not to be feared, not to be understood. You turn away from the chamber now, back into torchlight. The path winds on, but you carry something. With you, an image not of a monster, but of a girl who looked too long at the wrong god and was never allowed to look away again. The stone corridor narrows as you move forward, the air tightening, thickening. No music, no gods arguing in the distance now, just the sound of a chain dragging across rock. Slow, rhythmic, eternal. And then, at the edge of a wind-blown cliff, bound to the face of a jagged mountain, you see him. Prometheus. The titan who dared to care. He doesn't notice you at first. His head hangs low, his arms stretched wide-chained. The wind tears at him, snow settles in his hair, but he is very much alive. That's the problem. He doesn't get to die. Because Prometheus, unlike most titans, didn't oppose the Olympians in war. He helped Zeus rise to power, supported the new regime, believed, foolishly, that maybe this time the gods would be different. They weren't. Prometheus is the god of foresight, of clever thinking, of knowing what happens next and doing it anyway. He loved mortals. Not romantically, but protectively, tenderly, like someone who saw their fragile brilliance and couldn't bear to watch it flicker out. So when Zeus hoarded fire, literal, divine fire, Prometheus stole it back from the heavens. In a hollow fennel stalk, carried it down the mountain, lit the first campfire, watched humans gather around it like the beginning of a story. And Zeus did not approve. He saw it not as compassion, but rebellion. Fire meant control, power, civilization. Mortals were meant to crawl, not stand upright beside gods. So he punished Prometheus. Quirky aside, in some versions, Zeus first punished humans by sending Pandora with her jar, not box, of burdens. In others, the full weight of divine fury fell on Prometheus alone. Either way, The result is the same. Prometheus was chained to this rock far from Olympus, far from mercy. And each day, an eagle arrives to devour his liver. Each night, it grows back. The gods are many things. Creative? Definitely. Forgiving? Not so much. You walk closer. The wind howls louder. You think you hear words in it, not prayers, but regrets. Prometheus shifts slightly, one eye opening. He sees you. Doesn't speak, just nods, as if to say, yes, you're here. And yes, this is still happening. Historians still debate the role of Prometheus. Was he a Christ figure? A rebel? A symbol of humanity's thirst for knowledge? In ancient Greece, he was both celebrated and feared. A titan who gave humans more than they were ready for: fire, innovation, risk. He represents progress with consequences. Even now, mortals build, burn, invent, and every flame, every breakthrough is a little echo of that stolen spark. You sit beside him for a while quietly. There's nothing to fix, no way to help. Just the presence of someone who once made a choice for others and paid the price forever. Eventually, the sky shifts. The eagle returns. Its cry splits the silence. Prometheus closes his eyes, but not in fear. He's long past fear. This pain? It's routine now. What hurts more is knowing that even after all this time, the gods still punish those who dare to love mortals too much. And yet, he doesn't regret it. You rise as the wind swirls around you, carrying a hint of smoke from some distant hearth below. Maybe someone just lit a fire. Maybe someone just told a story. Either way, Prometheus is still here, still watching, still waiting for humanity to make the fire worth it. The wind carries you back down from the mountain, gentler now, warm like breath after a long sigh. You follow it through dry grass, past cracked stone, toward a quiet cottage that never really existed. There's no thunder here, no gods, just a single object resting on a pedestal. A jar. It's older than memory, etched with stories even the gods won't speak aloud. But you know it already, don't you? This is Pandora's jar, not a box, by the way. The box thing was a mistranslation by Erasmus in the 16th century. Classic Renaissance mix-up. But the truth? The truth is trickier. The story begins with Prometheus's punishment, not just the mountain and the eagle, but a broader divine retaliation. Zeus wasn't just angry at Prometheus. He was annoyed at humanity. So he crafted a gift. A trap wrapped in beauty. Enter Pandora, the first woman, molded from clay, sculpted by Hephaestus, blessed or cursed by every god. Athena gave her grace and wisdom. Aphrodite gave her charm. Hermes gave her a silver tongue. And Hera? Hera gave her curiosity. She was flawless. She was terrifying. She was delivered to mankind like an offering. Her name means all gifted. And along with her, she carried a jar. Zeus told her nothing of its contents, just that she must never open it. So of course, eventually, she did. Quirky. Aside, ancient versions say the jar was sealed and locked. Others say it was just sitting there, whispering, waiting. Historians still argue whether this moment was about disobedience, fate, or the inevitability of human suffering. When Pandora opened the jar, everything spilled out. Plague, famine, war, jealousy, pain, disease, lies, sorrow. The full disaster playlist of the human experience. They surged out into the world like smoke escaping a fire. That never should have been lit. She slammed the lid shut. Too late. Only one thing remained. Inside. Hope. And that's where the debate begins. Some say hope was the one blessing saved from the chaos. locked safely in the jar to be kept and cherished. Others say hope was just another curse, a way to prolong suffering with false expectations, a delay of the inevitable, a slow drip of maybe that keeps mortals from letting go. You approach the jar now. It hums faintly, not threatening, not glowing, just there. A container of everything you don't want, but can't seem to let go of. And Pandora? She wasn't evil. She wasn't vengeful. She was curious, human, made in the God's image, built from divine design and sent into a world unprepared for her softness, her questioning, her need to know. Some myths say she wept for what she released. Others say she spent her life trying to make amends. Some even say she opened the jar a second time, this time to release hope. Historians can't agree. Poets love it. Philosophers spiral endlessly. But maybe it was never about Pandora. Maybe it was about us. About the fact that no matter how much pain escapes into the world, no matter how many wars or plagues or betrayals, we still return to that jar. Still cling to what's left inside. Still whisper to ourselves, maybe tomorrow will be different. You sit beside the pedestal now. The jar doesn't open, doesn't speak. It just waits for another hand, another choice, another story. And beneath all the noise, the sorrow, the gods arguing overhead, one small truth remains. Hope is still here, not because it was spared, but because we are. You step away from the jar, its silence still echoing somewhere behind your ribs, and follow a rougher path now cobbled unevenly, darkened by shadows cast not by clouds, but by memory. Because some myths aren't about gods who build or love or protect. Some are about punishment, and no one was punished quite like Tantalus. You find him standing knee-deep in a crystal-clear pool, arms raised toward a low-hanging branch heavy with fruit. Apples, figs, pears. You can smell them from here, sweet, ripe, close enough to bite. But every time he bends down to drink, the water slips away. Every time he reaches for the fruit, the branch lifts just out of reach. Over and over. Forever. This is his afterlife, a punishment so precisely cruel. It birthed the word tantalize. But what did he do to deserve it? Tantalus was a mortal king once favored by the gods. He dined with them, shared their food, their secrets. He was trusted, which in Olympus terms is a very dangerous position to hold. And he betrayed that trust in every way imaginable. He stole ambrosia. He spilled divine secrets to mortals. And in the most grotesque version of the myth, he killed his own son Pelops and served him as stew to the gods. A test, supposedly, to see if they would notice. Most of them did. Appalled, they refused to eat, except Demeter, distracted by grief, who accidentally nibbled on a piece of shoulder. Horrified, the gods restored Pelops to life minus the shoulder, which Hephaestus replaced with ivory. And Tantalus? They cursed him, not with pain, but with proximity, placing every comfort and need just inches away, forever out of reach. Hunger and thirst, surrounded by food and water. The ultimate irony. Quirky aside, some myths claim Pelops went on to become a great hero, giving his name to the Peloponnese, the southern peninsula of Greece. So yes, even after being served as soup, he managed a pretty successful career. You watch Tantalus now as he lunges for a pear that darts upward like it's laughing. His eyes are dull, not from suffering but from repetition. He's been doing this longer than memory. You wonder if he remembers why anymore. If the punishment has replaced the person, historians often interpret his myth as a warning about hubris, about betrayal, about the line between mortal pride and divine patience. But it's also a story about need, about desire that never dies, even when it's stripped of meaning. about being surrounded by almosts and maybes and not quites, and being told every moment, no. You step closer. The water doesn't ripple for you. The fruit doesn't move. For a second, you're tempted to reach out just to see, just to feel the edge of denial. But then Tantalus looks at you, really looks at you, not with anger, not with a plea. With warning, because his curse isn't just punishment. It's contagious. You step back. Some myths don't need gods or monsters, just a man, and the consequences of thinking he could outwit hunger. The echo of water recedes behind you, but something about the rhythm of longing stays in your chest. You pass through a forest, now thin trees, quiet wind. No birds, just leaves crunching softly beneath your feet like old bones. And ahead, perched at the edge of a cliff, is a figure frozen in motion, her arms outstretched, her eyes wide with pride. Or maybe regret. This is an Iobe. Queen of Thebes, daughter of Tantalus. And, in a way, her father's mirror. Niobe had everything: power, beauty, status, and children. So many children, in fact, that she lost count. Some say 12. Others say 14. The poets couldn't agree, and maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was she had more, and that's where the trouble began, because pride is loud in myth. And when it speaks, it rarely whispers. Niobe looked at Leto, the quiet, grieving mother of just 2 children, Artemis and Apollo, and scoffed. Why do people honor her? Niobe asked. I have more children. I'm clearly more blessed. More deserving of worship. And the gods heard. Leto didn't scream or rage. She didn't storm into Niobe's palace. She just looked at her children, and they acted. Artemis and Apollo descended like dusk. One by one, they struck down Niobe's children, boys by Apollo's arrows, girls by Artemis's. In some versions, 1 child was spared. In others, none. The palace fell silent. The laughter, the footsteps, the joy all gone. Niobe fled. Quirky aside, there's a mountain in what is now western Turkey Mount, Cypulus, that locals once claimed held a stone shaped like a weeping woman. Rainwater streaked the surface. They said it was Niobe, still crying, because that's how her myth ends. Fleeing to the mountains, Niobe begged the gods to end her suffering. And they did. They turned her to stone, but left her tears forever falling. Historians interpret her tale in many ways. A caution against arrogance, a reminder of the god's sensitivity, a symbol of maternal grief that never ends. But what lingers isn't the punishment. It's the moment before. The moment Niobe stood tall, counted her blessings out loud, and believed they made her invincible. She wasn't cruel, just proud, just human. And in Olympus's eyes, that was enough to make her dangerous. You stand beside her now. The stone is smooth, cold, not dramatic, just still. And somewhere deep within it, you think you hear a sob, not loud, not wailing, but the kind of sound a mother makes when she's trying not to wake the rest of the house. You wonder what her thoughts were in the end. Was it regret? Or disbelief? Because pride rarely expects to be punished. It expects applause. You turn away. The wind picks up again, and Niobe keeps crying. Not because she's been forgotten, but because, in myths like these, she never will be. You walk in silence now, along a path strewn with wilted petals and broken lyre strings. No divine laughter here. No golden halls. Just the scent of damp earth and something softer underneath grief. You're walking into a story that doesn't belong to gods or kingdoms. It belongs to a song. And to Orpheus, the greatest musician of myth. A mortal whose voice could bend rivers, tame lions, stop wars, if only for a verse or two. He didn't fight. He didn't scheme. He sang, and that made him dangerous in a way even Zeus didn't fully understand, because Orpheus didn't move mountains with strength. He moved hearts. You find him seated at the mouth of a dark cave, lyre in hand. He's not playing it, not right now. But you can tell from the way his fingers hover that every note still lingers in him like old. Tears behind the eyes. His story begins with love. Her name was Eurydice. Some say she was a nymph. Others just a girl. Either way, she was his, and he was hers, until one day she stepped on a serpent in the grass. One bite, one breath. Gone. The world did not end, but his did, and so Orpheus did what no mortal had ever done. He went after her. He walked into the underworld, not with weapons, not with demands, with a song. Quirky aside, every creature of the underworld Cerberus, the judges of the dead, even Persephone herself paused to listen. They wept, they remembered. For a moment, death softened, and Hades, he allowed it, a deal. Eurydice could return with Orpheus on one condition. He must walk ahead, she must follow behind. And he must not look back until they both reach the surface. It sounds simple, but it never is. They walked, one step, then another. The darkness peeled away. The light grew. Orpheus could feel it, her footsteps behind him, soft as breath. And just before they reached the threshold of life, he turned. Why? Historians still debate. Some say he doubted. Some say he couldn't bear not seeing her one moment longer. Some say the gods knew he would fail, that the story needed that final twist. She vanished. Again. And this time, for good. You stand beside him now, just outside the mouth of that same cave. He says nothing. He just plucks one note, soft, aching, perfect. A note that says everything. Orpheus returned to the world, but never fully. He wandered, sang, refused new love. In some versions, he was torn apart by Maenads, followers of Dionysus, because his music stirred something they couldn't understand. In others, he simply faded. But his story remains. A love so deep, it walked into death. A mistake so human, it broke the heart of every god. And a lesson? Maybe, or maybe just a reminder, that sometimes the hardest part isn't the journey down. It's not looking back. The cave behind you fades, but the silence Orpheus left behind follows you. It settles like mist, a quiet reminder that not all tragedies come from gods. Some come from the way mortals try clumsily, beautifully to love. You walk further, and the quiet changes. It becomes echo. Not the acoustic kind. The person. You turn a corner and find a stone garden. Columns twisted with ivy. A fountain trickling somewhere in the distance. And leaning against the edge of a carved bench is a young woman whose voice was once her. Power, and now her prison. This is Echo, a nymph. Bright, talkative, known for telling stories, jokes, songs, anything really as long as someone was listening. And for a time, everyone did. But one day, Echo crossed Hera. She wasn't a rival. She wasn't a lover. She was just clever. See, Echo had a habit of distracting Hera with long conversations, stalling her while Zeus snuck off to conduct his latest divine research. Eventually, Hera caught on. And she didn't yell. She didn't banish. She cursed. From that moment on, Echo could no longer speak her own thoughts. She could only repeat the last words spoken to her. Quirky aside, this is where the modern meaning of echo comes from, not from sound bouncing, but from her. She became background noise. a reflection of other people's words. No voice of her own. Then came Narcissus. You've probably heard of him. Beautiful beyond belief, desired by all, kind to no one. He didn't care for Echo or anyone. He only cared for the adoration. But Echo saw him in the woods, fell in love, followed him, waited for the perfect moment to reveal herself. And when he finally said, "Who's there?" she answered softly, "There." It went on like that, a tragic game of call and response. She could never say what she meant, never explain, never warn him what was coming, because Narcissus, he would soon see himself. He found a pool of still water, leaned over, and saw his reflection. And for the first time, he felt something desire, but he didn't know it was for his own image. He stayed there, staring, longing, forgetting to eat, to sleep, to move. He reached for the face in the water, and when it didn't reach back, he broke. In some versions, he wasted away and died there, transformed into the Narcissus flower. In others, he finally understood, too late. Echo watched it all. She couldn't stop him, couldn't shout, couldn't explain. She just repeated his last words, "I love you, love you." And when he was gone, she retreated into the caves, into the rocks, into the wind. And now, she's still here, not as a person exactly, but as a presence, in every hollow place, in every moment where someone calls out and hears their voice thrown back, not as a reply, but as a reflection. Historians read this myth as a warning against vanity, against pride. But there's another layer. Echo isn't just a victim of punishment. She's a symbol of silenced voice, of what it means to lose your say in the story, of what happens when your words only serve others, never yourself. You sit for a moment, listening. No footsteps. Just wind, and softly from somewhere behind a crumbling wall, still here. The garden fades behind you, and the path begins to twist, like a tangled family tree with too many broken branches. You're not walking through a myth. Now, you're walking through a lineage, a bloodline soaked in prophecy, betrayal, revenge, and roast dinners no one should have attended. Welcome to the house of Atreus, the most cursed family in Greek mythology. And that's saying something. It starts depending on how far back you want to go, with Tantalus, the stew-cooking king you met earlier. Remember him? Served his son to the gods? Yes, this is that family. That son, Pelops, was restored to life, rebuilt with ivory shoulder and all, and grew up to become a powerful king in his own right. You might think the curse ended there. It didn't. Pelops had two sons, Atreus and Thyestes. They hated each other. In one of the most delightfully horrifying family feuds ever recorded, Thyestes seduced Atreus' wife and tried to steal the throne. Atreus, in response, invited Thyestes to a reconciliation banquet. The main course? Thyestes' own sons. Yes, cooked, served, consumed. When Thyestes found out, he did what any emotionally stable person would do: fled to a temple and swore vengeance. Eventually, he fathered a son with his own daughter. That son was Aegisthus, born for revenge. Quirky aside, the Greeks didn't shy away from these tangled stories. They saw them as moral spirals where one crime begets another, and blood never stays buried. Atreus' line continued through Agamemnon, his son, who led the Greeks in the Trojan War. Remember him? King of Mycenae. Stole Achilles' prize girl. Thought sacrificing his daughter was a great way to get good sailing winds? Yes, that Agamemnon, he killed his daughter, Iphigenia, to appease Artemis, his wife. Clytemnestra never forgave him. So when he returned from Troy victorious, weary, smug, she welcomed him home with open arms. And a murder plot. She and Aegisthus Yes, the revenge baby killed him in the bath. And so, the next act began. Orestes, son of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, returns years later and on command from Apollo kills his own mother to avenge his father. Matricide. 4. Justice. You see now why this family line was cursed. The Furies, ancient spirits of vengeance, rose up to torment Orestes. They chased him across Greece, hounded his every step, until Athena herself had to intervene and put him on trial in the first ever divine courtroom. Drama. And when the trial ended, acquittal by a hair's breadth, the curse finally loosened its grip. Historians view the House of Atreus as a metaphor for the evolution of justice. From revenge to courts. From blood to law. From chaos to order. But as you walk through this ghostly hall, portraits flickering with betrayal and grief, you realize something simpler. The gods may play a drama, but mortals live it. This wasn't about thunderbolts or divine jealousy. This was about jealousy between brothers, marital resentment, grief that turns into knives, love so twisted it folds in on itself. The House of Atreus reminds us that curses don't always come from Olympus. Sometimes they're inherited like a crooked jawline. You pause beneath a mural. Agamemnon raising a knife. Clytemnestra raising an axe. Orestes, eyes wide, caught between. No heroes, just choices and consequences. You leave the crumbling halls of Atreus behind and step into something stranger, wilder. The air changes here, thicker, humming with a kind of uneasy energy. This place doesn't belong to gods or heroes. It belongs to creatures, because tonight, you're entering the tangled corners of mythology where divine family drama doesn't end with arguments or betrayals. It ends with monsters. Not monsters in the modern sense. No pitchforks or CGI. These are beings born from fear, chaos, and extremely bad parenting. Most of them, in fact, are the children of gods, or titans. Or gods with titans. Or sometimes, whatever was available. We begin with Typhon. He wasn't just a monster. He was the last resort of the earth itself, Jaia's final answer to the Olympians after they defeated the Titans. A creature so massive, his head scraped the stars. His voice, a chorus of animals shrieking. His arms, 100 serpents, each breathing fire. Typhon challenged Zeus himself. Nearly won. Ripped out Zeus's sinews and hid them in a cave. Quirky aside, Hermes and Pan later stole them back, because of course they did. Hermes never misses a chance to sneak into a cave. Eventually, Zeus defeated Typhon and buried him beneath Mount Etna. And to this day, when the volcano rumbles, people say it's Typhon still angry. And who was Typhon's wife? Echidna, the mother of monsters. Half woman, half snake, all maternal nightmares. Together, they produced a truly cursed family tree. Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guards the underworld. Hydra, the many-headed serpent, got one off, and two grow back. Chimera, a lion-goat-snake hybrid with a bad attitude and worse. Breath, Orthrus, the two-headed dog, not to be confused with his three-headed brother. And most famously, Scylla, the sea monster with 12 dangling legs and 6 dog heads. A real conversation stopper. You walk through a rocky path now, flanked by statues of these creatures, fangs bared, eyes wild. But you notice something odd. They're not evil, not inherently. They're guardians, punishments, tests, obstacles, planted in mortal stories not to end the heroes, but to shape them. Heracles had to slay the Hydra. Odysseus had to pass between Scylla and Charybdis. Bellerophon battled the Chimera from the back of Pegasus. Each monster, a trial. Each defeat, a myth. And behind each monster, a god, a curse, or a consequence. Historians often argue whether these monsters were symbolic fears of nature, Death, the unknown. Or if they were just the ancient world's version of asking, wouldn't it be cool if this thing had snake arms? But you start to see a pattern. These creatures were born not from nowhere, but from divine imbalance. Typhon rose because Zeus ruled. The Hydra multiplied because Heracles tried to conquer. Scylla and Charybdis exist where ships must pass because surviving life requires danger. Even Medusa, remember, was transformed, not born. Monsters in Greek. Myth aren't the opposite of gods. They're the byproduct, the spilled wine of a divine tantrum. The ash after a lightning strike. The unspoken truth behind Olympus's shining throne. You reach the end of the path, where a mural shows Echidna watching her children run wild across the world, not with pride, but with something else. Resignation. Maybe because even the gods' monsters want something to protect, to punish, to be remembered. And they are, because sometimes the scariest thing isn't the monster itself. It's the fact that it didn't choose to be one. You step beyond the cave of monsters into a clearing where the air feels unsettled, not angry, not quiet. Just waiting. And standing in the center of this uneasy calm is a figure you've seen before, but never like this. This is Dionysus. Yes. That Dionysus, the god of wine, parties, theater, and letting your hair down after a long week of goat sacrifices. But tonight, he's different. Not drunk, not laughing. Just watching, because under the grapevines and giggles, Dionysus has his own kind of family drama. The sort that starts with a mortal mother and ends in fire. His mother, Semele, was a princess of Thebes. Mortal, beautiful, and doomed the second Zeus noticed her. They had a secret affair, his favorite kind. But when Hera found out, she didn't punish Semele directly. She whispered in her ear instead, "If he really loves you," Hera said sweetly, "ask him to show you his true form." So Semele did. Zeus, bound by oath, revealed himself in all his divine, lightning blazing glory. And she burned, but not before. Zeus rescued the unborn child from her ashes, sewing him into his own thigh, like some mythical emergency pouch. And thus Dionysus was born. Quirky aside, he's literally the only Olympian god born twice, once from a mortal, once from Zeus, which explains a lot. Dionysus didn't grow up on Olympus. He was hidden away, raised in secret. Some say by nymphs, others by distant ants. But wherever he went, madness followed. Not always loud. Sometimes just off. His arrival on Olympus was late, dramatic, like showing up at a wedding halfway through and insisting on changing the playlist. Some gods never fully accepted him. He wandered, brought wine to humans, brought chaos to cities. The myths often show him as a liberator of inhibition, of gender roles, of social structure itself. He was worshipped by women, foreigners, outsiders. And he didn't just tolerate madness, he weaponized it. The Maenads, his female followers, danced into frenzy and sometimes into violence. Entire cities tried to reject him and paid dearly. The most famous was Pentheus, king of Thebes. He mocked Dionysus, banned his cult, and disguised himself to spy on the wild rites. Dionysus allowed it, invited it. Pentheus was torn apart by the Maenads, including his own mother. Historians still argue whether Dionysus represents freedom or destruction, joy or disintegration. He's both the release from order and the cost of that release. A god who feels mortal, who was always a little out of place, a little too soft and too sharp at the same time, and he never fit the family mold. Even on Olympus, Dionysus is the odd one out, the god of masks, of transformation, of blurred lines. He doesn't sit quietly during councils. He doesn't hurl thunderbolts or hold grudges in the usual way. He pours wine and waits for truth to slip out. You sit beside him now, in this twilight clearing. He offers you a cup not full of wine, but something stranger. Memory, maybe dot, and as you sip, the stories ripple behind your eyes. Mothers burned, kings broken, mortals weeping, gods laughing, and Dionysus just watching. Because in the end, every family needs that one member who sees through the performance. Who knows that under the crowns and curses, every god is just a little bit broken. And maybe that's why Dionysus is here tonight, not to entertain, but to remind you that the line between madness and meaning is always thinner than we think. The wine fades from your tongue like a memory you're not sure you ever had. Dionysus vanishes into the trees without sound, no grand exit, no fireworks, just absence. And you're left alone in a clearing that's too quiet to feel empty. Because tonight, you've walked through every crypt hallway, every cracked pedestal, every drama-laced branch of a divine family, tree held together by chaos and pride, and you're still standing. Now comes the strangest part of all. You return to Mount Olympus, but not to marvel, not to kneel. You return to see that the gods are still there, lounging on thrones made of clouds and thunder. But now, they don't look quite so distant. You see Zeus still ruling, but with bags under his eyes from centuries of damage control. You see Hera, arms crossed, not because she's jealous, but because no one ever asked her what she wanted. You see Apollo, polishing his lyre to distract from the ache in his chest, and Artemis, eyes always on the horizon, as if hunting something she can never name. They're powerful, beautiful dot, but also messy, lonely, petty, unforgiving, grieving. They are family dot just. With lightning bolts, you notice that Olympus, for all its divine shine, echoes the same flaws you saw below. Rivalry, miscommunication, too many dinner arguments, too many stories that end not with victory, but with silence. And that's when it sinks in. The Greek gods didn't create humans in their image. Humans created gods in theirs. Because who else could understand family drama that spans generations, where love and betrayal ride the same chariot? The myths weren't just bedtime stories or religious doctrine. They were therapy. They were the Greeks saying, "We see how broken life is, so maybe the sky is broken too." You walk past Poseidon, nursing yet another grudge. Past Hermes, eavesdropping for fun. Past Athena, silent but calculating. And somewhere, in a shadowed corner, Hades watches it all, never judging. Just there, the stars begin to flicker overhead. The drama is still unfolding, always will be. But for now, it quiets. You lie down on a marble bench that shouldn't be comfortable, but somehow is. The air hums low, like a lullaby you can't quite place. And as you close your eyes, the stories don't fade, they soften, because Olympus will still be there tomorrow, still arguing, still scheming, still deeply, undeniably themselves, just like us. So now, with every family secret aired, every thunderstorm past, and every divine awkward silence still echoing in the marble halls of Olympus, you breathe just a little easier. Let the weight of all that drama slip off your shoulders. No more betrayal. No more curses. Just clouds. Soft, endless clouds. Let the stories settle, not like heavy thoughts, but like dust in sunlight. Let the gods retreat back into myth where they belong, their voices fading into that warm hum behind your eyes. No more fiery chariots, no more golden apples. Just you, the stars above, and the steady rhythm of your breath, because even the loudest myths eventually quiet, even the wildest storms pass, and even the messiest families Rest. Let your thoughts wander, slowly, like leaves across water. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. Let sleep carry you, not like a hero on a quest, but like someone who no longer needs to try. You've heard the drama. You've made it. Through. And now, you get to drift. Quietly. Completely. Good night from Olympus.